Hello and salutations, it's me, Salty. Welcome back to 2 Cents Toys, and today we're doing part 2 of my history of G.I. Joe collecting, which is my contemporary collecting, how my collection looks now, what I collect now, things like that. This is still the same image from the last video to kind of dovetail into this one. I'll kind of clear this off and we'll start the next video, but just to kind of recap a little bit, most of the Joes I had as a kid were bright neon, or it came from like the 97-98 line were the last purchases I made. Almost every single Joe, especially the ones up here except for General Flag, went into a yard sale around 2007, and I kind of stopped Joe collecting for a while. Just lack of disposable income was a big factor. Lack of place to keep them was another. Moving around a lot. 2012 started collecting again. Very, very rarely did I pick up a G.I. Joe, maybe one or two. Otherwise, it was lack of knowledge of character names, and I didn't know how to Google them. I didn't know about like yojo.com or 3D Joes or any of the websites that may have been around at that time. I wasn't really involved in YouTube at all, so it was kind of like I had the tools to use, but I didn't know I had the tools, if that makes sense. So I was primarily focused on Toy Biz, X-Men, and vintage Star Wars at that time, and I almost never collected modern. So that kind of brings you up to speed to this video. I guess to kind of start in 2015, so from 2012 to 2015, I'd amassed what I call collection number 2. My life entered a kind of space where nothing was guaranteed. I didn't know what was going to happen. Was moving, more frequently, and I had a big lifestyle change occurring around that time. And basically, I had nowhere to keep my collection. I wasn't able to store it anywhere. I didn't have the money to put anything into a storage unit. And the one place that I had basically said that I could keep it out in their garage, and I was like, I don't want to do that. So collection number 2, with very, very few exceptions, like General Flag back there, got sold off all at once to one toy store, and that was heartbreaking and devastating. And I kind of fell out of collecting for a couple of years. I didn't start collecting again until late 2017, early 2018 is when I really started to rebuild my collection quick, fast, and in a hurry. I had finally had kind of a more suitable lifestyle, wasn't moving as much, and had a lot more disposable income. I'd found a much better job. So that kind of brings up to speed to what we're about to talk about. Before you see what kind of kicked off the Joe collecting again, I wasn't fully aware of the 25th anniversary line that started, I believe, was 2007, 2008, around that time. Like I said, I wasn't actively collecting by that point anymore. And when I came back to collecting, happened upon a toy store that was here locally, and they had these 3 Joes. I got Shipwreck just because he was there, more or less. He was only $3, so I said, why not? Same thing with this Duke and this Destro. They were in Ziploc baggies and marked at $3. So I was like, you know what? Why not? I'll go ahead and get them. I'd become much less militant in my collecting. Collection number 2 was strictly vintage or on-card figures, and I'd kind of loosened that. I was like, I'm fine with collecting modern now. I don't care if they're beat up or have a yellowed hat or anything like that. And some eagle-eyed viewers may notice that Shipwreck's O-ring broke, which happened about 3 seconds ago, but I'll replace that later. It's not that big of a deal. On top of that, I decided, I had all these kind of great memories of G.I. Joe as a kid, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to start collecting G.I. Joe again. It's time. I'd kind of gotten over losing all the ones I had, and it was time to start piecing that collection back together. And I went off the deep end, quick, fast, and in a hurry. I started collecting the vintage Joes en masse. Like I didn't care what condition they were, because I no longer cared about condition. If they had a broken thumb or broken crotch, I just cared about having the character. I didn't care about condition so much anymore, and I still don't. Like, every Joe is a good Joe, even the broken ones. When I started looking at vehicles, the only 2 vehicles I know for sure that I had as a kid was the APC, which was missing its canopy, and I had the Havoc, which was mostly complete. It had the little hover thing in the back. It was missing the canopy that went over that. It had its windshield and a little cannon that went on top, but other than that, the little wheel guards were gone and all the extra missiles were gone, or extra guns. I had Cross Country, who for whatever reason, I hated that figure. He fell victim to a red marker and red nail polish very quickly. I don't know what it was, but I did not like Cross Country. The thing I found with the 25th anniversary line, though, were that the vehicles were for the most part, the same molds as the original vehicles, so I could spend a fraction of the price to get them. Which one of the vehicles I always wanted as a kid was the Tomahawk, and those who collect G.I. Joe know how not necessarily difficult it is to find a complete Tomahawk, but how expensive they can be and how fragile these rotor blades are. So the Eagle Hawk, I was able to find that for, I think it was like $50, something like that, and the blades can, collapse in on themselves so they don't, snap. They're much more malleable plastic. To me, it was great. Like, getting over that hump of not allowing myself to collect modern really helped out a lot, because, I will get a traditional Tomahawk eventually, but until then, I think the Eagle Hawk works just fine. I wish it had the kind of clear plastic on the bottom, but, sacrifices had to be made. And because I had the modern Eagle Hawk, I started to collect the 25th anniversary line without realizing it. First, I just started getting a couple of my favorites, like I mentioned, Destro and Duke. The 3 3/4 Duke, I had versions of him, or this is the Duke I currently have, which is in much better condition than the one I had as a kid, because his nickname in some of the online forums is Mr. Glass, because he's notorious for breaking, which is why on my shelf he's displayed like that. Can't fall over and break if he's not standing up. I bring that up because it started with just getting a couple of my favorites, like getting a Storm Shadow and a Destro, for example. I was like, okay, the price is right. Sometimes there's a few kind of used toy stores, for lack of a better word, around here, because they're not focused on toys. They're kind of just a multimedia store that sells movies, comics, and the like. But most of the toys they sell are used, and every once in a while they pop up, and they're usually about $3 to $5 a figure. And by and large, they have all their accessories. Like Storm Shadow came used in a bag with all of his little pieces. So without realizing it, I kind of quickly amassed a bunch of these types of figures. Just picking up 1, 2 here and there. I always liked that version of Storm Shadow, version 2. Flint was one that some of the neighbor kids had that I always wanted. For whatever reason, I liked the shotgun shells that he was wearing. That was always the coolest thing to me. And of course, who doesn't love Firefly? I picked them up, carded. I think it was off Instagram, if I remember correctly. I don't remember who, though. By and large, everyone else came as a block baggie from one of those stores I mentioned, just over the course of a couple of years. And it's one of those things you don't realize you're collecting until all of a sudden they're all out all at once, because when I brought them home in a baggie, I kind of opened them up, read their file cards or whatever, put them back in a Ziploc baggie, and kind of dumped them into a box that I have. And it really wasn't until a couple months ago that I noticed just how many I had, and I was like, oh, didn't realize I was collecting this line, but I guess I am. So, there's still a few of my favorite characters are missing, like Spirit. I don't even know if they made General Flag or not, because this line, I think, what is it? It went for 10 years or 11 years from 07 to 18, I think, right around there. I think I remember seeing that popping up in late 2018 about how this line was being canceled, which we'll cover that more in depth in the next video. They're not, the vintage, of course, but I do love these figures. I think they're great. They're significantly cheaper in most cases compared to their vintage counterparts, and they're easy to find. You can usually buy, I think the 3 of them on card cost me $30 roughly, and that's without shipping, of course, but I couldn't beat that. I think these are great. Articulation's really cool. They're posable. That kind of lets you know a little bit about what I'm doing modern. I guess these are modern. It's kind of they're not my focus right now with G.I. Joe. My focus is vintage, not my entire collection, just due to space limitations. I tried to pick kind of a variety from the original 13, like Breaker here, all the way to, the 90s. Like I was saying, I tried to pick a variety, starting with I've got Breaker, Rock and Roll, Flash, and Grunt are all straight arm from the original 12, original 13, all the way to Ice Cream Soldier and Skid Mark, and even a couple of post Real American Hero, like the Storm Shadow, all the way back here. So I tried to get kind of a swath, a broad brushstroke of the entire line on one spot, and there are a few duplicates in here. But just because they're not here doesn't mean I don't own them, though there are some glaring omissions, like I don't have Stalker, for example, or I don't have the original Gung Ho. There are some kind of key players missing from this assortment, but still collecting. It's by no means complete. And even then, these figures are varying degrees of completion. Some of them might just have the figure, some might have a backpack, some might have, one weapon, all weapons. Some are entirely complete. I have one carded, for example. But that's the best part about G.I. Joe. There's something for everybody in this line. If neon is your thing, then you can get, Leatherneck version 3, or Snowstorm, or, Topside. Topside's not so bad, but he does have some neon. Or Ice Cream Soldier. Or if you want just pure military look, you can get, version 1 Rock and Roll, or Flint and Duke up here, or if you want an MP, there's Law and his dog Order. There's all sorts of stuff for everybody. So that's one of the best things about this line. And then on this side, I did the same thing with Cobra. I tried to get kind of a wide variety, like my straight arm, Coco up here. No, he's not the Mickey Mouse Coco. Destro, various different flavors of troop builders, bright neon stuff here in the back, Globulus over there in the corner where he belongs. And even in the Cobra side, I have some glaring omissions. Like, I have all the Dreadnoks, some of them aren't here, but, I don't have Zartan, for example. There are some kind of glaring omissions, and I tried to limit the troops. Like, I've got one version of each Crimson Guard here from the Real American Hero line. I've only got 2 Iron Grenadiers. I do have more modern ones post Real American Hero. And again, these are all varying degrees of completion. Snow Serpent here has all of his accessories, where Storm Shadow doesn't have any and he's missing his thumbs. But he is pearly white. That's why I always say there's no such thing as a bad Joe. No accessories, all accessories, broken or not. Like this Storm Shadow, is almost perfect, except for his thumbs, which means if I find a Storm Shadow that's completely yellowed and his arms are great, I can just swap out his arms and I have a perfect Storm Shadow. That's one of another great part about G.I. Joe is that you can move around parts and pieces, which I kind of showed you in another video. Cutter here is a good example where he's yellowed on this part of his leg, but this panel is fine. So if I find a Cutter that, this panel is yellow, or this panel is yellow, this one isn't, I can swap them out and I have a good leg. That's what's great about this line. Just because you have the figure doesn't mean that the hunt is over, so to speak. Kind of when I started collecting these, initially what I started to do was to try and track down all the ones I had as a kid, like all my favorites, like Updraft, the Nitro Viper, Destro, Spirit, trying to find my favorite characters I had as a kid, and then being the responsible adult I am, I went hog wild with it and started to buy all the stuff I wanted as a kid and never got, which was vehicles. Tons and tons and tons of vehicles, which, due to space limitations here, by and large, I kind of left the vehicle drivers in their vehicles more or less. Not all the time. Some of the vehicle drivers are up here, like Cutter, for example. I picked up his tank. One of the only ones I got in box was the Cobra Mamba. So there he is with the Gyro Viper in the cockpit. One of my other vehicles, which is 99% complete, would be the MCC. You can see all these different photos here, photos of the interior and all. It's 99% complete. So, and I have the Killer Whale here, of course, which to me is top 3, if not top 2 best vehicles for G.I. Joe. I love the Killer Whale so much. I don't display it with the veins on the back, just because most of mine are already broken, so it's not complete. I've got the APC, the Wolverine, the Awestriker, the Asp, the Armadillo, the Vamp, the Rattler, of course, the Mobat tank, and probably my biggest one would be the Terrordrome, which is absolutely massive, and that's 99% complete. I just need a complete Firebat and the driver, and then my Terrordrome will be complete. And that's one of the better things, again, that I've kind of alluded to, and I'll reaffirm here, is the hunt is never over. I believe there's over 400 figures that they made, so you got to think that's 400 figures just to start, all their accessories, if you want a file card, if you don't want a file card, if you want them on card, which I don't really recommend collecting on card, personally. Some people do. I don't. I make very few exceptions to collect on card, mostly because I want to figure out, I want to move them around, I want to put them in a vehicle, I want to, set up displays and all that. I just think they're more fun out of card. There's no wrong way to collect G.I. Joe, vintage, repro. I'm a big fan of Black Major. This is the chrome bat that he put out once upon a time. I didn't even know who Black Major was. I just saw this in a kind of a secondhand store, and they only wanted $20 for it, so I was happy to get it. You know, I just thought it was cool looking. And then I did the video already putting together the glow-in-the-dark snow serpent, so, you know, there's tons of stuff available, tons and tons and tons. And by and large, most of it is very easy to find. And that's just for the United States Real American Hero. That's not even talking about Action Force in the UK or, you know, the Fun School stuff from India, you know, the specific country specific stuff to like Argentina and Brazil and Mexico. Like they had their own individual characters, and it was, you know, the line just goes on and on and on. But that's one reason I was really happy to get back into GI Joe. You know, there's something for everybody. If you don't want a character, you don't have to have it. You know, and the swappability, you can kit bash and make your own custom characters if you want to, which I've done before. I've made them and sent them off to people. I made custom Michael Myers out of GI Joe parts. I've made Michael French from Retro Blasting as Bespin Luke, done in the vein of G.I. Joe, and sent that off to him. To me, it's one of the most perfect toy lines you can collect. And that's why I get upset with myself at times that I didn't collect G.I. Joe back when I was collecting my second collection, but at the same time, it's just as well because they would have gotten sold off again anyway. Doing these kind of videos have been really cathartic for me, because I've said before that G.I. Joe is my favorite toy line. And not only do the figures kind of take me back to that time when I was much younger, you know, today they're still great. And one of the benefits I have now of kind of hindsight and all that, of allowing myself to collect modern, is army building. That's one thing as a kid I never got to do. If I had a figure, I had it. There was no way, no how I was going to get another one. If I broke it, I was very, very lucky if I got one to replace it, because it was, you broke it, tough luck kind of deal mostly. And because I'm an adult now, well, air quote adult, with disposable income, I can army build all I want. And now that I don't limit myself to vintage only, I can army build things that might be a little cheaper. By not limiting myself to vintage and allowing myself to collect more modern things, I was able to army build all these bats, which this is the bat from 91, I think, maybe 92. Garishly neon with green and orange and black, but I kind of like this color scheme. Again, I have a soft spot for the neon figures, and it's the same mold that they use to make all these bats. You know, I am a sucker for translucent plastic, so these Inferno bats were kind of a no-brainer for me. And, you know, these are, typically speaking, cheaper and easier to find than regular, you know, vintage bats, which for whatever reason, in like the last couple months, bats have shot up to like, I've seen them go for $80 each on eBay. I have no idea why, but they shot up out of nowhere, so I buy up these guys. To me, they're still bats. They're based off an original mold. I have enough of them now that these are the guys that man the Terradrome for me. I like the way they look, you know, and that's the other thing. There's, like I said before, there's something for everybody. And if you don't like these bats, there's vintage bats. There's these kinds of bats. You know, there's bats of different colors. You know, it's one of those things that you can be as selective and picky as you want with vintage G.I. Joe, or you can just accept all of it. Like kind of my golden rule for 3 3/4 is O-ring construction. Like I showed you earlier, I do like the 25th anniversary line, but they're on their own collection, which I, again, didn't realize I was even collecting. That's kind of where I'm at with my vintage G.I. Joe collection at the moment. Just kind of giving you a from then to now kind of deal. I'm going to call it a day on this video. I hope it was interesting to you. Let me know if you're collecting G.I. Joe currently, what your stipulations are. Like, are these too new for you? Are you an absolute purist? Your bats have to come from, I believe it was 86 or 87, something like that. You know, maybe you like the Valor versus Venom line, or anything else that may have come out. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head. As long as it's not Sigma 6. I don't own any of those. I will never own any Sigma 6. I don't like it. Anyway, in the next video, it's going to be a change of tone, because it's going to be kind of G.I. Joe going into the future. What's going to happen with it, the current state of affairs with it. Strap on in. Make sure that you're subscribed if you liked Part 1 and Part 2 or any of my other content, because Part 3 should be coming out here in a couple days. And until next time, thanks for stopping by. I'm Salty, signing off.